The Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Happening today, the House takes up a bill to legalize medical marijuana here in Pennsylvania, with a vote soon to follow. CBS 21's Kyle Rogers is live at the Capitol. Good morning, Kyle. This move by the House being called a game changer.
Yes, Sherry, good morning to you. The talks are finally moving forward here at the Capitol after being on the back burner for some time. And if passed as is, this would mean doctors would be able to prescribe certain aspects of marijuana to certain patients. And one woman we spoke to says it could change her life.
I could be walking down the street by myself and I could fall over and not know anything. It's the extreme terror of not knowing when you could just lose consciousness.
Beth McCormick began having seizures after falling down as a teenager. She says since then her life has been a series of black holes.
You die for a few seconds, and it's over and over again throughout the day.
She's had part of her brain surgically removed, but the seizures still continue. She can't drive a car or go for a walk alone. But now Beth hopes one last medication could change her life: cannabis. This week in Harrisburg, lawmakers in the House may vote to legalize medical marijuana, and this afternoon, a debate scheduled to begin.
See, I'm not asking for anything that's crazy here. I'm asking for us to bring this plant under proper stewardship, under proper watch.
Senator Mike Fulmer has been behind legalizing medical marijuana for years. And while the Senate has approved bills in the past, the House will make its move while there have been a reported 200 amendments to the original proposal. Some worry it would water down the bill that Fulmer wants to see happen.
In other words, at Christmas time, you would not want to give your child a toy that doesn't have batteries. Right. Correct?
Right.
I want to make sure that this has batteries, that this would actually be workable, and that people would actually be able to start and start a program.
And opponents have said before that this could be a gateway to other drugs. Now, the talks here at the House will begin around 1 o'clock today. The governor says if it reaches his desk, he would sign it. For now, we're live here in Harrisburg this morning. Kyle Rogers, CBS 21.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
It's the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
All right, already. We know that cannabis oil helps kids with seizures. We know. We've heard it from Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and we've heard it in TV and newspaper reports all across the country for better than a year now, better than 2 years now, better than 5 years now. It's been the mainstream argument to bring medical marijuana mainstream in those red states in the South. Boy, you start talking about the Bible Belt states, and I don't know how, in the first place, the Christian folk, the evangelist folk, I'm speaking from my pulpit. You better stay away from that demon weed marijuana. It's going to swallow you alive. It's a slippery slope to the other demons in the drug world. You're going to become a cocaine freak, a heroin addict, and it all starts with that little slippery thing called marijuana. I'm here to tell you today, folks, I'm testifying before you right here in this pulpit that I'm a complete idiot. Where in the world did the South become disenfranchised with cannabis? At least, in the religious world. Because I don't see anything in the Bible that says anything about marijuana. I don't. In fact, if you really want to look at it... Oh, it gets a little worse. There are psychoactive properties in frankincense and myrrh. Did you know this? Are you aware of this detail? You guess what they were bringing the baby Jesus? Bringing him that frankincense and myrrh. You didn't hear anybody uprising about that. Somewhere the South, through mostly evangelical, humble Christian beginnings, became this idea that marijuana was somehow anti-Christian, even. That you can't be a Christian if you have anything to do with this thing you call cannabis. And I wholly reject the idea. In fact, I think from a theological standpoint, from a practical standpoint, just from a common sense standpoint, the two have nothing to do with each other, really at all. And there's really no mention of cannabis in the Bible at all. You could read into some things that this might be making reference to cannabis here or there, but no specific cannabis references whatsoever. Yet somehow, the religious parts of our society have decided that cannabis is evil and that somehow it must be avoided and somehow it is demonic. I think nobly conceived, but also ill-conceived, because they just are not connected. So it bothers me when you talk about the cannabis oil, and mind you, I don't mind that this is an open doorway to the legalization of cannabis or medical marijuana. And if you've got to start with such a baby step, with passing a law that allows for the use only of non-psychoactive CBD in cannabis oil for seizure patients, mostly kids, because you empathize with those kids and you can't get them high. God forbid they might get stoned from something that's doing them something good. I'm not suggesting that it's the goal. I'm suggesting that if the high is a side effect, who cares about that side effect if indeed the underlying condition is being treated, and in many cases is such as this, it is. Where's the proof of that, Mr. Green? Show us the proof. Well, I'll tell you where the proof is. It's right there in black and white today. Did you see the story? It's right there in the marijuana news. Marijuana stock soars 130% after study shows its drug-reduced seizures. Talking, of course, about GW Pharmaceuticals, and I'm reporting to you from Forbes.com. This came today. For years, GW Pharmaceuticals has looked like one of the only seriously legitimate stocks in the highly hyped so-called pot stock sector. And on Monday, the British company gave investors more proof that it was for real. GW Pharmaceuticals reported that its cannabinoid drug, Epidiolex, reduced seizures for children suffering from a rare and debilitating form of epilepsy in a 120-patient trial. Shares of GW Pharmaceuticals soared on the news, rising 130% to $88.94 on Monday. In a sea of iffy publicized trading companies trying to capitalize on changes in state laws allowing the use of marijuana for medical and even recreational purposes, GW Pharmaceuticals has stood out for its serious effort to develop marijuana-derived medicines for numerous diseases. The company has been around for years and is listed on NASDAQ. It has commercialized Sativex for the treatment of symptoms of multiple sclerosis and has 4 late-stage trials ongoing for severe forms of epilepsy. GW, there's the proof right there. Today, the news being, this is a much larger story, and I guess we could go into it in greater detail a little bit later, but I want to make my point, which is, this is the proof. It was the first hurdle in the phase 3 trial, reported on Monday. GW Pharmaceuticals' Epidiolex drug being developed to target Dravet syndrome, which is a form of childhood epilepsy that hits before babies reach their first birthday. In that phase 3 trial reported today, patients receiving Epidiolex, a liquid formulation of highly purified CBD extract, experienced a statistically significant median reduction in monthly convulsive seizures of 39%, compared with a reduction of a placebo of 13%. The company said it will be making further moves to gain FDA approval for Epidiolex, which could be the first prescription marijuana drug in the U.S. From the standpoint, remind they've approved constituents of cannabis before, like THC in the form of Marinol and a couple of other versions of Marinol. The results of this Epidiolex pivotal trial are important and exciting as they represent the first placebo-controlled evidence to support the safety and efficacy of pharmaceutical cannabidiol in children with Dravet syndrome. Oren Davinsky, a doctor at New York University, Langone Medical Center's Comprehensive Epilepsy Center, said in a statement released by GW Pharmaceuticals, these data demonstrate that Epidiolex delivers clinically important reductions in seizure frequency together with an acceptable safety and tolerability profile. See, this is what the FDA wants. It wants this. The problem is that the underlying studies, in order to get this far with the FDA, had to be conducted in another damn country. I'm talking about Israel. In other words, to say that there is medical proof or evidence that leads us to believe that this could be a treatment in a derived form, in a standardized derived form, to deliver to the babes of the earth, our children, safely, effectively. But GW Pharmaceuticals couldn't do this, couldn't conduct this trial here. You know why? Because the base, the material that they get this Epidiolex from is the cannabis plant itself. Now, they've got a particular variety of cannabis that they're using, and I'm sure they're working on patents for that. And the U.S. government already has 6630507. That's the U.S. patent number for cannabis related to its THC and CBD components as being as being neuroprotective. Its neuroprotective qualities. Yet somehow cannabis in this country has no medical value. None. There is no medical value, Mr. Green. You can't conduct that study here, says the National Institute on Drug Abuse, because there's no recognized benefit and use. We're not going to give you none of that cannabis that we grow here in the United States under the control of the DEA. We're not going to give you any of it for your crazy cannabis study. So they took it to Israel, where they got something done and came back to the FDA.
You're getting the full melt.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit PetPain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio show.
Oh, my, oh, my. Phone lines here are sponsored by No Smell Bags at nosmell.com. You can go there and find your awesome No Smell bag. Different sizes right there available for you. I think there's even, if I'm not mistaken, a discount. You can order them online and get I think there's a 10% discount. You can get there's a product code they give you right there. You gotta like the cannabis bags, those no smell bags. I know that some friends of mine have used the bags we've had on demonstration out in many places around the state, at least here. We didn't take them to Colorado with us. We should have taken the no-smell bags with us to Colorado because I'm sure they'd have been a giant hit out there. We seem to have them sometimes at the Hash Bash and also at the Cannabis Cup when we go out there. I don't recall bringing them to Colorado. I don't know if they might have been out of stock or something. I don't know. I forgot why we didn't take them to Colorado. We certainly should have. If you know, ask us about the no smell bags when you get out. If you see us at Hash Bash this year, because we're going to go out there again this year. If I'm not mistaken, Tommy Chong's going to be out there again. I think he's going to be out at a signing booth somewhere at the Monroe Street Fair, if I'm not mistaken. You know that there will always be a circle of people standing around Tommy Chong, you know, kind of just catching the drift of whatever might blow their way from Tommy. What is that? Is that the new... doesn't Tommy Chong have his own variety of weed now? I think he does. I forgot. I got to look it up now. I forgot the name of the Chong weed. Chong, you know. Chong was good with the bongs there for a while until... who was it? Ashcroft, John Ashcroft, the former Attorney General under Bush, came after him. Remember they threw him in prison over selling bongs on the internet? Craziness. Get a chance to come out and see Tommy Chong. What is it? The first weekend in April is when Hash Bash is. If you get a chance to, if you're in the area, or even if you're not, and you come to Michigan specifically for the Hash Bash, which there are a great number of people, surprisingly enough, that do just that. Look, I'm just going to share something with you. Here's a little insight for those of you in Colorado who think you got a leg up on everybody else in the world. In Colorado, if you go to Denver or any other place, there's no public smoking of cannabis. It's illegal. And generally, it's not really tolerated very well. If they catch you smoking cannabis in public, they're gonna be mad at you and they're gonna come after you. And you might get a ticket for that. Might have to show up in court because you were smoking pot in public. It's kind of like having an open intox, ticket. You're not supposed to walk around on the street with beer or wine or other spirits either. You can do that on your private property. If you're out there, with your little kiddie pool and your barbecue grill and you're drinking a beer or you're having a cocktail, whatever, it's all good. But you can't be walking down the sidewalk like that. Same thing goes with cannabis, pretty much in Colorado. Now, I don't even think, as a private citizen, you're supposed to be sitting on the porch smoking cannabis. Although I don't think anybody's going to say anything. I think if you're outdoors in public and you're visible, somebody can say something. I might be mistaken about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the letter of the law, at least. I believe. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Call the no smell phone lines, the no smell bag phone lines at 844-420-TALK. Tell me if I'm wrong about the Colorado thing. I think I'm right, though. And it's easy to check on, that's for sure. I don't need to do the checking. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. In any event, at Ann Arbor, during the Hash Bash, it is also technically illegal to smoke cannabis. However, in Ann Arbor City, the city of Ann Arbor, it's only a small fine and a civil infraction at that. if you're caught smoking pot in public in Ann Arbor. They've had that law in effect ever since the scheduling of cannabis in the first place. They've had this law on the books. Shortly after John Sinclair was arrested for giving 2 joints to a federal officer somewhere, that wasn't a very bright move. He got 2 years for those 2 joints. And that was what kicked off the whole thing there in the early 70s. This is 1971? It was the same year that they had scheduled cannabis as a Schedule I narcotic. And it was right after this that John Sinclair was busted in the city of Ann Arbor for those 2 joints. And got a federal sentence over it. Can you believe that? And then the John Sinclair song from John Lennon. And then the hash bash began. And basically the hash bash itself is a protest on the University of Michigan's grounds, which is state property, not city property. See, if you're on the University of Michigan grounds on state property there and you have open cannabis and you're smoking it, remember this is a university. It's considered a school. You can't have cannabis there. And so it's state property. They'll prosecute you under state law with their, local security there. They'll bust you and you'll get arrested and you'll get hauled off. They'll prosecute you under state law. They won't prosecute you under Ann Arbor's city ordinance. In Ann Arbor, the police are directed to write you under the city ordinance. So on the Diag, which is right there between some of the main student campus buildings there, that's where the protest is held. For people who are not familiar with the hash bash, and I know there are a lot of them who are not, then right adjacent to that, on city grounds, on city property, or, the street is city property, but all of its adjacent buildings and whatnot are all private property. And over there, they have the Monroe Street Fair, which is the gathering that happens for the pot smoking after the hash bash, because I'm telling you, if you're over there at the hash bash, which is technically the name of the protest that happens on state property, and you're smoking weed, you're gonna get wrestled to the ground by a couple of cops. And I've even seen somebody standing near the curb. They're just too close to the curb, right? They're right at the borderline where the other cops can get you, where you're standing on state property instead of on city property. And so what I saw a cop do one year at the hash bash was actually push the guy, nudged the guy until he lost his balance and stepped onto state property, and then they arrested him then because he's on state property with weed. They actually nudged him onto state property. Slimy bastards. You got to be careful out there. I'm just saying, if you're going to be walking around at the hash bash smoking marijuana, it better not be at the Diag. It better be over at the Monroe Street Fair, and then nobody gives a rat's ass. There are people openly smoking bongs and pipes and joints all over that entire street. Nobody is going to do anything about it. But if you get too close to the curb, you might get nudged over the edge and arrested by the state cops, because they're out there just waiting for you to cross that line, just waiting. Like, you remember Porky's and when you cross the county line, you're in a different sheriff's turf, and they all go screeching to a halt at the county border. It's kind of like that. Boss Hog standing over there. It's cute. Yeah. So we got you up on one day of the year. It's only one day of the year. But see, the other place that I saw people openly consuming cannabis like that happened to be at the Denver Cannabis Cup. And it was the first one, and it was awesome, and it was a great time. Now, they weren't doing it in mostly the open areas, like even outdoors. There was some outdoor smoking going on, but you were generally discouraged from doing that. And if the people there caught you, they would put that away. You got to go over there in the medical area. You can have that over in the medical area. But not over here in the public area. But, people were doing it anyways. Outdoors, in the open. And this is what caused them a problem, I think, this year with getting a permit. The police didn't like that. They didn't take action on it in a criminal way. They took action on it in a way that kept them from getting a permit there at their regular venue. And there were 2 complaints. Number 1, too much public smoking of marijuana. It's not legal to do that here. You can't do that. And number 2, probably the bigger actual concern in question, was the venue's attractiveness. The locals don't like the Cannabis Cup because it clogs up the inner workings of the city for the whole weekend. They're getting 35,000 people a day trying to attend the Cannabis Cup for 3 days, and the capacity is less than half that. It's like 15,000 people. They didn't like that. I mean, we did the Bernie Sanders event at the Breslin Center in East Lansing, and they had the top part closed down because they don't expect they were planning on using it, but they actually opened up part of the top part for overflow. But that was just 11,000 people, and that was a whole stadium, a whole arena full of people. This event gets more than that, times 2 every day. So the locals are like, they did kind of like Amsterdam. See, the Amsterdam locals didn't like the Cannabis Cup either. It clogged up their inner workings. It clogged up the gears. You couldn't get a seat in a coffee shop when the Cannabis Cup came to town because it's the only place you could really go get your cannabis if you wanted some local cannabis. And let's face it, if you're flying across international waters, from one continent to another, and you've got to have your passport and all that stuff, and you got the extra bag, which they charge you for, and there's the fuel surcharge, and then all the expensive airport food and the parking, and et cetera, just add on. When you get over there, you better be able to find some cannabis. And the same thing goes in Denver. See, this was before, now this was when I was there, a year ago, April. That was the first regular Cannabis Cup. See, the ones before that were all medical Cannabis Cups. This was now, they'd passed the recreational law, so now this was the regular Cannabis Cup. They moved the Cannabis Cup from Amsterdam to Denver. And then abandoned Amsterdam because Amsterdam kind of got unfriendly about the whole event. And now they've moved the World Cannabis Cup to Jamaica. I don't think they ever technically moved the World Cannabis Cup to Denver, although I think it was under consideration at some point. And it had to have been. Because the proof is in the pudding. They were planning on leaving Amsterdam anyways. I'm sure that Denver was a good target, but it was just, it's just started. So what I'm saying is that they didn't have, you couldn't go buy cannabis as a tourist. You couldn't go buy cannabis as a tourist yet. You couldn't even buy it recreational at that point. In time, and it had to have changed when last year. I'm sure it was different. I wasn't there last year. I couldn't get out there. But I'm sure that it wasn't only the medical area where people had cannabis. And I don't know how the selling went. When I was there, you had to have a medical card and you had to go to a dispensary to get your marijuana. Now, they had samples there, and if you had a card, you could smoke then. You could sample and check it out and do all that stuff. They had all kinds of samples going on. A lot of people passing around their own joints around, that kind of stuff. A lot of free dabs. Dabs all day. It was kind of funny because there was the line to do dabs and then the aftermath line for coughing. There's a couple of paper towel rolls. It's just kind of funny. But this was the thing that the police didn't like, I think. I mean, that was 2 years ago. Over 2 years ago, around 3 years ago now. Wow, how time flies. But see, that was 2014. You couldn't do the retail cannabis. You had to have a card, and you couldn't be a tourist and get any medical marijuana because they didn't recognize your medical card from another state in Colorado. They're not reciprocal there, like we are in Michigan. In Michigan, see, you're supposed to, and this is really strange. In Michigan, it's supposed to be a reciprocal state. You're supposed to be able to come to this state with your medical marijuana card from Colorado and be protected by it. Now, you can't cross state lines with weed because that's breaking federal law, right? And you can't get the cannabis when you're here because even though here technically legally the only way you can have cannabis here is if you grew it yourself or assigned a caregiver to grow it for you. That's the letter of the law. Now, we have dispensaries here, and they operate outside, quote unquote, the letter of the law under special provisions given to them by city ordinance most of the time, or in places where they, haven't taken position on this or enforcement. Most places, however, have taken negative position. They've passed ordinances trying to say you can't have your medical marijuana here. That didn't go so well. They lost that one. I think in the Court of Appeals, and then the Supreme Court didn't pick it. I don't know. It's settled law. You can't restrict the state law with local ordinances. But in the long run, the face of cannabis is changing across the nation. And I guess it's going to be just painful for me to sit by and watch, the kind of stuff, because there's more and more of this becoming very prevalent. They had this argument in Utah recently. And then the legislature killed it. They've already had this argument in Pennsylvania a couple of years prior. We've had Senator Fulmer, who was, interviewed in that segment at the beginning of the show by News 21 out there, that came on the program to talk about his fantastic Senate proposal, which the Senate overwhelmingly passed a couple of times. House never picked it up. Now the House is looking at this, and it's always about CBD. As long as you're not getting high, we'll talk about marijuana being a medicine. You took a step towards the medicine side, right? Pretty soon you'll start to see that that's working for those people, and you're going to see this progress with GW Pharmaceuticals. And the next thing you know, somebody else is going to come along and say, I don't have Dravet syndrome. I'm not a kid, but there's evidence that says it works for me too, my chronic condition. And then pretty soon the legislature will have to be looking at that, or somebody somewhere will pass a ballot initiative and get that done there. But that thing might have more in it. See, it might be available in flower form or in others. This is how it progresses across the country, and it's got to start with that crazy cannabis oil thing that's only CBD, because CBD by itself is not always effective against seizures. Sometimes you need some of the other cannabinoids too.
The Full Melt.
I've seen things no man should bear, and those that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy to the far reaches of the earth. In my life, I have lived millions of lives. I've outrun robots and danced with dinosaurs. I've faced the faces of fear and fortitude and witnessed great beauty in the making. I've kept the company of kings and queens, but I'm no royalty or saint. I've traveled, trekked, wandered, and roamed, only to find myself right where I belong.
Jeep. See your authorized Jeep retailer for details on how you can become a Jeep owner.
We ask people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
RootMetrics, in the nation's largest independent study, tested wireless performance across the country. Verizon won big with 153 state wins. AT&T got 38, Sprint got 2, and T-Mobile got 0. Verizon also won first in the U.S. for data, call, speed, and reliability. AT&T got text. Stuck on an average network? Join Verizon, and we'll cover your cost to switch.
Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Dordt Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570. Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience, bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Dordt Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. You know, the marijuana economy is supposed to hit $44 billion by 2020. What? Welcome back to the Full Melt Show. I'm your host, Steve Green. You'll hear us here Monday through Friday from 7 until 8 p.m. normally. Did you spring back? Or wait a minute, you don't spring back, you spring ahead. You fall back, right? You spring ahead, you fall back. Did you spring ahead? I think I forgot to spring ahead this weekend. It's funny because I told everybody, hey, don't forget to spring ahead. I should have tied a ribbon around my finger because, guess who forgot to spring ahead? The pot economy going to be 44 billion with a B by 2020. That's only a couple short years away. I think that's an underestimate. I think that estimate, it's got to be small. I don't know. If California is successful in doing that, remember, California represents 1/5 of our U.S. economy. 1/5, one state. If California does recreational cannabis or retail cannabis, a much more appropriate term. Much rather use retail cannabis than recreational weed. Because it's what it is. See, the other one is slanted. It's negative it's pejorative, you see? It's intended to give negative connotation. You won't see the alcohol industry allowing, even for a moment, somebody saying a recreational booze certificate, a recreational booze license. You know why? Because, again, it's pejorative. It's not recreational. It's adult use. This is retail use by consumers. It's retail alcohol. That's what you get, a retail alcohol license. Same thing with cannabis. It's not a recreational weed license. It's not. It is it's a retail cannabis license. That's what it is. So if you look at California, if they come on alone, and they're going to likely, Sean Parker and all his friends are out there propping it up, giving them their dollars. It's likely to happen, isn't it? I think it is. I think California has got it down this time. I think they've glued people together. I think they've learned from mistakes in the past. They've gone through several election cycles attempting to do this, always failing. Because they splinter. You remember, united we stand, divided we fall. They always divided. Everybody wanted to protect their own little corner of the market, and everybody wanted to argue this and that, and then let the prohibitionists mix it in there, and they always failed. I think this year they've got their sights set to win. I think the money's there. I think everything is there. If California pulls this off this year, imagine how $44 billion could change. This is a projection based on what they think now. Retail cannabis in Colorado hit $1 billion when you mixed it with medical weed. In other words, cannabis sales in Colorado, nearly $1 billion. It was like $996 million or $997 million last year. And that was just its first. See, that's at the end of 2015. They report that. Which was only a couple months ago. So it's the first year of retail sales mixed with medical sales that they could give you an accurate button to put, it's an accurate number. Now you imagine cycling forward by, 5 years to 2020. and you bring a bunch of other states on. You can imagine that Colorado, by population, is a very small state. It is. When you get into a lot of those breadbasket and mountainous and sometimes desert regions of the western side of our country, it's part of the desert Southwest, and it melds into the mountains going into the Rockies and the Colorado Rockies, and that's where it's at. You don't have that many people there. It's very sparsely populated, except in these city areas, and even in the country areas where there's population, it's sparse. It's rural, very rural. It's funny because if you go through Denver, you can see where they made parts of the mountain. Just look, we're going to put a house here. Sometimes you'll see a mountain with just a house on the side of the mountain. Nope, we're going to just, I know rocks might fall on us. I know what's underneath could come up. We're going to put a house here. Okay, put a house there. It's hard to put a house on a mountain. How do you get the construction materials up there? What a view, though, when you're roofing that place. Sparsely populated Colorado represents $1 billion in sales. Now, mind you, that didn't all come from locals, but a lot of it did. A lot of it did. You don't have the Cannabis Cup every weekend, but people are coming for tourism on a regular basis. You won't get the tourism, because I tried to interview them about this. The tourism people are like, how are we to tell? How can we tell, does anybody book any events? Well, I guess there are some events booked, but, the tourism people, when you start talking about tourism, like, looking at destination for some, if you're, the state of Las Vegas, Nevada, the state of Nevada has, in Las Vegas, they want to be a destination for tourism. Primarily, they want the trade shows. They want trade shows. They want associations coming and booking big venues there. And then they've got the trappings of Las Vegas outside of that. See, it's a smart move, and they've been very successful at it. Las Vegas will always be a great destination to bring your business meeting, have your association, your national association meet there. If you've got a trade group or a trade association, you always find lawyers and doctors, everything, you find veterinarians. Everybody wants to meet in Las Vegas because, when the meeting's done, you can go back to your, Las Vegas hotel room. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They get that whole thing, though, all 3 days of however their event goes. They get to go out and have some nightlife, maybe stay a little while afterwards, go to the casino on a few nights. You know what I mean? They get all that stuff. Denver, all they got's weed. Colorado, all they got's weed. California is much more tourism-oriented. I mean, let's face it. You've got Hollywood there. You've got Los Angeles. I mean, it's the most populated, most densely populated city in the country. It's beautiful land out there. The weather's always nice. Great tourism in California. And you can bet your bottom dollar if they get retail cannabis there, they're going to be grooming that field for as many people as they can get from out of state as possible. And all these questions loom in the question mark of who's going to fill the Supreme Court's decision. Who's going to fill that vacant seat? I mean, it's a divided court. 4 plus, 4 con, 4 pro, 4 con. 4 liberals, 4 conservatives by, I think, assessment. That's how people have assessed them, based on who nominated them and who confirmed them and then their actions in court after that. But in the long run, you're going to see modification about this issue. I think the Supreme Court has been very temperate in their positioning on this particular subject because as it relates to cannabis, you've got neighboring states of Colorado, Kansas, and who else? Nebraska, arguing that the illegal weed is coming across the state lines because it's not legal here, so it's illegal here. It's coming across the state borders from all those legal producers over there. It's leaking out, and it's costing us money, and it's harming our populace. And so that's the argument they're making to the Supreme Court, that you can't let these guys exist in the face of federal law. They might argue themselves out of the prohibition of cannabis. They might argue themselves out of the federal question. The federal government may just say, you know what, we're out of this game. We're done. They're pretty close to being there. Congress has already put pressure, tremendous pressure on the federal government to let go of this issue, even though Congress has control of the very question, because too many people are paid off to keep cannabis illegal. If you keep your finger on the pulse of congressmen and senators in our federal government that have direct control over this issue, they could have a hearing, call a couple of meetings, and have this zipped up in no time, descheduling cannabis or rescheduling cannabis. This takes it really down major notches as far as an enforcement principle, because it's a much lower offense. It's no longer worth chasing around if they lower it on the schedule. And this is why I suggest you should deschedule it altogether, because this whole plant as a medicine doesn't belong on the controlled substance list of banned plants and or drugs. It is a whole plant, not a part of the plant, not a constituent, not a component. It's the whole plant. You can do this with other plants. You can't do it with cannabis. You can separate out only one opiate in an opioid and test it for its efficacy and its dangers and its dosage and all that stuff. You can run it through clinical trials. You can do that because the opium poppy, is not in the same genre as the cannabis plant, which really stands out by itself. Because if you take THC out and try and leave it absent of all of its entourage or all of its ensemble, then you get a different symphony. If you just took the horns out and played just the horns, you don't get the whole Moonlight Sonata anymore. It's only the horns. And they only play a couple times during the song. Most of it's flute, right? Most of it's piano. You've got to take the whole symphony into consideration, and you can't isolate it like you can with the other plants. So you're going to get Congress is going to provide its own pressure, because as states legalize this year or produce medical marijuana laws, they're going to have an interest and incentive in keeping the federal government off the states' back now that they've made this major change in drug policy. Mark my words on it.
You're getting the full melt.
Promotional consideration provided by NoSmell.com, pioneering the storage market for cannabis users. The NoSmell patented bag technology offers users 100% smell-proof detection from even the most sophisticated of noses. NoSmell.com, so nobody knows. When placing your order for a No-Smell bag, make sure to use discount code FULLMELT and take 10% off the entire order. Learn more about No-Smell technology at NoSmell.com.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit PetPain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
There ain't no secrets anymore. My name's been hanging on the hook outside your door. Just to know.
You know, it's really easy to subscribe to us on iTunes. That's right, our show ends up as a podcast at the end of each live broadcast, and you'll find it in your iTunes folder. If you go to thefullmelt.com, click on the iTunes link, and subscribe. It's just that easy. 844-420-TALK, the no smell phone lines, open now. I wanted to tell you once before we had a chance to go, because this is always the shortest segment of the show. You know, those people at the Motley Fool are pretty clever at getting people. There's a lot of clickbait comes out from the Motley Fool. Motley Fool is really they're in the business of advertising investment opportunity. That's really what they do at the Motley Fool. But they disguise what they do in news. So they'll do something newsy, some news related story, and then tie investment into it, and then they'll try and sneak you their investment advertisements. They find marijuana is a frequent topic that gets them a lot of clicks, which is what they get paid for at the Motley Fool, is clicks. And, you know, one of this, read this before you buy any marijuana stocks. The marijuana industry may be growing rapidly, but if you don't know these critical points, your investment in marijuana stocks could go up in smoke. This is why they call it the Motley Fool. It may not rank up there next to Social Security or Medicare, but marijuana is getting itself a lot of coverage this election season, and for good reason. According to the latest national poll from Gallup, 58% of respondents would like to see marijuana legalized. This tied the previous high watermark for Gallup's poll, and it's more than 30 percentage points higher than public responses fielded in Gallup's poll during the mid-1990s. Medical marijuana has an even higher approval rating, with a CBS News survey in April of last year showing that 84% of respondents want to see marijuana approved as a treatment for certain ailments. What you need to know about buying, number one, they say if you're going to buy marijuana stocks, most marijuana businesses are losing money, they say. And then they give us a bit about that. And then number two, most marijuana stocks trade on the pink sheets. What does that mean? Well, in addition to most marijuana businesses losing money, the vast majority of marijuana stocks trade on the pink sheets or over-the-counter exchanges as penny stocks. Regulations on over-the-counter exchanges have improved substantially in recent years, but the reporting standards still aren't on par with what you'd find with a company listed on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or even the New York Stock Exchange RCA, the ARCA Exchange. What this means for you is that finding permanent, accurate, and up-to-date financial information, such as cash on hand, debt, cash flow, and so on, could prove to be difficult if you're into the marijuana stocks. It's a little trippy over there. Marijuana businesses face two inherent disadvantages, and they go into those. Basically, that the plant remains illegal at the federal level, and then also you're not able to take normal business deductions like rent and stuff like that because, it's their ill-gotten gains. We're going to tax you at 90%. And you can't take any bit. You can't your mortgage, your payroll, any of your overhead. You can't deduct any of that. We're going to count that as your income, and we're going to tax you on it. Number 4, the 2016 elections will hold a lot of weight. Potential investors in marijuana stocks should also understand that the 2016 elections could tell the tale of where marijuana heads next. On one level, we have what could be about a dozen individual states voting on ballot initiatives to legalize medical, recreational, or medical and recreational marijuana. The more states that choose to legalize, the more pressure will likely be placed on Congress to take up marijuana's rescheduling. Didn't I just say all that? That federal level set up for a discussion because the weight is shifted. The weight has shifted, rather. Additionally, whoever becomes president could have a lot of sway when it comes to marijuana's future. Democratic presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders wants to legalize marijuana across the board. Donald Trump would like to legalize only medical marijuana for the time being. On the flip side, Republicans like John Kasich and Marco Rubio aren't in favor of legalizing marijuana save for rare, compassionate use instances. Oh, you're dying? Oh, go ahead and give him some weed. He's going to die now. No, it doesn't matter. Can't enjoy his high anyway. Number 5, Congress is in no rush to discuss marijuana legislation. That's right, because they're all being paid off by all those guys that got their money sunk into prohibition. That's the truth behind that. Number 6, the growth potential is enormous if certain things happen. Oh, sure. High risk, high reward, right? If certain things fall the industry's way, like rescheduling by the feds, marijuana's growth could soar. ArcView Market Research believes that even without legalization, marijuana can grow at a compound annual growth rate of 30% between 2016 and 2020, resulting in $22 billion in legal sales by 2020 without doing anything. That's why they're predicting $44 billion by that date. Marijuana stocks, indeed, reports Motley Fool at Fool.com, would indeed be an intriguing investment. There's something happening big this Friday. They say, I don't know about you, but I've always paid attention when one of the biggest, best growth investors in the world gives me a stock tip. Motley Fool co-founder David Gardner, whose growth stock newsletter was the best performance. See, this is the sneaky part where they sneak in the investment opportunity. Whose growth stock newsletter was the best performing in the world, is reported by the Wall Street Journal, and his brother, Motley Fool CEO Tom Gardner, are going to reveal their next stock recommendations this Friday. Together, they've tripled the stock market's return over the last 3 years, and while timing isn't everything, the history of Tom and David's stock picks shows that it pays to get in early on their ideas. And then they go on, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, disclaimers saying it has no position in any of the stocks mentioned because you can't be making investment advice without all the proper checks and crosses and balances. No investment advice on the radio. You're not allowed to do that, or in printed form, it's solicitation. But somehow, this is what Motley Fool exists for, is to give you these juicy things about these great stories and then sneak in at the bottom, hey, by the way, don't forget our investment advice. We're going to reveal it all. And they actually make it a part of the story. It's not separated. It doesn't say advertisement. It's actually a part of the story. So don't be foolish when going to Fool.com. And paying attention to what they're going to eventually try to recommend to you as investment advice to buy certain stocks. A great piece of investment advice today, like the insiders, I'm sure the insiders knew that GW was going to make this clinical trial announcement, and then the stock nearly doubled in price before it fell off to 130% improvement. That means it more than doubled in price. Not a 50%, not a 60% improvement. So you got $1. Now it's $1.50, $1.60. Nope. Indeed, that dollar is now $2. Now it's $2.30. That's where it went today, from $1 to $2.30 if you're just using the math. It really, it started out as a $44 stock or something, went to 89 or 90. I don't know. It's right up there on par with where Apple started out. So it may be good advice, and I'm not an investment advisor, to try and jump in on the GW bandwagon, right? You're going to pay a lot more for that stock today than you did yesterday. But chances are you might pay a lot more for it in the coming months, given that the rest of these clinical trials come off as favorable as the first ones did. But if you listen to this show or know anything about cannabis, you knew that was a foregone conclusion anyways, didn't you? That's right. We gave you the news ahead of time.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.